Is a hearing on Senate Bill number 8. So Chris, if you'll give us an overview of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 8 should look familiar to those who have been on the committee. We've had this for a few sessions now. It's identical to Senate Bill 142 that was passed out of this committee last session. Senate Bill 142 did make it to conference, but that's where it died. So Senate Bill 8 requires drivers to proceed with due caution when passing stationary vehicles displaying hazard lights, road flares, or caution signals. Bill would also create a new traffic penalty for violating the provision. And Section 1, that's the traffic infraction description, provides that a driver approaching a stationary vehicle displaying hazard lights, road flares, or caution signals, and those caution signals include traffic cones, signs, or reflective triangles, must take one of two actions. In A1, it specifies that if a driver is traveling on a highway with at least 2 lanes going in the same direction, that the driver should change the lanes away from the stationary vehicle with due regard for weather, road traffic, and road, weather, and traffic conditions, I'm sorry. And then in subsection A2, that provides that a driver that is not traveling on that type of highway, so a highway with at least 2 lanes, or changing lanes would be unsafe, then such driver should approach the stationary vehicle with due caution and reduce the speed, with, again, regard to road, weather, and traffic conditions. Section 2 is where the new traffic infraction is placed in the uniform fine schedule. It's a penalty for unlawful passing of a stationary vehicle, and the fine is $75. The Senate Committee on Transportation recommended this bill favorably for passage with no amendments, and the Senate Committee of the Whole passed it 39-0. Revisions of the bill would become effective upon publication of the statute book, July 1, 2025. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee members? So to refresh my memory a little bit, I believe this went through the consent calendar in the Senate.
Possibly, yeah, I think so.
And then how does this differ from the move over bill we had last year?
It does not. It's the same exact.
It's the exact same.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the vote counts on that bill? I know we kind of bundled some of those together, but do you remember what the vote counts were last year?
Yeah, I think Senate Bill 142 passed out of the Senate 38-2, similarly to this bill. I think this committee added the mobile phone violations as part of that last year, and I think it still passed the House with a large margin. As I said, it made it to conference, and that's where it died. I think it passed the House. The conference committee report also passed the House. It just didn't pass the Senate.
Do you know what the vote counts were, Jill? This year, when we voted on it, the 2 or 3 times we voted on it.
Yes, Chairperson. The vote counts were 104 to 18, and on the CCR, 102 to 18.
So it had kind of overwhelming support, even with the controversial piece. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. If everybody will review the fiscal note. All right, with that, we'll start with our proponents. The first proponent that we have is Travis Lowe, Governmental Affairs to AAA Kansas. Welcome to the committee, Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I am Travis Lowe from the Braden Heider Loan Associates firm, here today representing AAA Kansas. AAA Kansas proudly represents and serves over 350,000 Kansans across the state. On behalf of AAA, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to support legislation that we believe will improve roadside safety for Kansas drivers and including, most importantly, innocent bystanders who are stranded on the side of the road. As was asked yesterday and noted by the revisor as well, this bill is familiar to you and you have seen it a number of times as it was sent over last year from the Senate in Senate Bill 142. That was the move over bill. It is identical to this language. Last year you had a hearing on that bill and you also combined it with the hands-free bill, which was a separate vehicle, no pun intended, and that was merged together. That was ultimately passed by this House with, I think, as the revisor said, 98 votes, and then ultimately went to conference committee, and you passed it 2 more times on the floor. So 3 times you voted for this legislation last year on the House floor. We appreciate for that. Unfortunately, it did stall in conference committee. The hands-free portion was a little bit problematic for the Senate side. We didn't hear any concerns about the move over bill language that we're discussing here today. So Senate Bill 8 before you today is a 2-prong approach who would protect drivers stranded on the side of the road. By disabled vehicles, we're referring to vehicles who are stranded on the side of the highway, displaying hazard warning signs, signals that includes the lamps, road flares, caution signals, traffic cones, and even reflective triangles. These types of this is detailed on lines 11 to 12 on page 1 of the bill. The bill essentially works in 2 different scenarios. We want to give those an overview right now. If you're driving on a 4-lane highway or an interstate, and if you come across a disabled vehicle on the side of the road, the best practice in the bill would be to slow down if you're in the right lane and ideally move over to the opposite lane. If that's not possible, just slow down as you approach that disabled vehicle as you pass by. The other opportunity would be if you're on a 2-lane highway where there's not an opposite lane, you would just slow down, proceed with caution as you pass by. Now, the bill does not define what proceed with caution means. It just means slow down as you pass, be aware, be alert, i.e. not drive by 70 miles per hour while you have somebody who is changing a tire just mere inches or feet from the side of the road. Now, this bill may sound like common sense and confident that many of you already practice this good measure as you drive down the roads, but sadly, we have seen the consequences to this as it is not law right now, and KDOT will provide some of those statistics later in their testimony. Now, Kansas does have a slow down and move over law for emergency vehicles, tow trucks, utility vehicles, and maintenance vehicles, but not for disabled vehicles, as we described earlier. Now, this bill does not apply to a vehicle that's been abandoned, left on the side of the road that has that law enforcement tape on it. This is about the disabled vehicles that are displaying those hazard warning signs, as we referenced early in our testimony. This is a $75 fine, and that is detailed on page 7 of the bill. There has been a fiscal note prepared, but there is no fiscal impact. And AAA Kansas would be remiss if we did not thank the coalition of supporters for this bill, not only this year, but in previous sessions as well. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions.
I think we'll hold the questions to the end, except for with Catherine. And with that, next on the agenda is Catherine Magana, Legislative Policy Analyst for the Kansas Department of Transportation. Welcome to the committee, Catherine. And I'm kidding, but thank you for your hard work as a liaison for us with the department. Anyway, you may proceed.
We always appreciate working with this committee. I'm Catherine Magana. I'm with the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I'm happy to be here providing, sure. Thank you. Happy to be here providing a proponent testimony on SB 8. As Travis mentioned, we are here to support this bill, and we have some crash statistics to provide to you. First, though, I do want to just kind of reiterate that this is first and foremost a safety bill. If cars are disabled on the side of the road, as many of us have been there before, you know, you're fixing something or you just need to pull off on the side of the road, you know that it is not doesn't always feel like the safest place to be. And we want to make sure that the law reflects that change, and also to just create some standardization and parity between law enforcement vehicles, which already it is required that you do give them slow down and move over to the opposite lane. And so we want to create the same thing for our passenger vehicles. For our crash statistics, we show that from 2018 to 2023 on the state system, we had nearly 1,000 empty vehicles that were struck while on the side of the road. Those crashes resulted in 8 fatalities and 25 serious injuries, with hundreds of possible injuries and property damage crashes. Additionally, 82 crashes occurred with someone that was in their vehicle while on the side of the road on the state system during that same time period. And from those crashes, we saw 2 fatalities, 4 serious injuries, and dozens of minor injuries and property damage crashes.
Can you explain to me the difference? Those two sound to me like they're the same thing.
Sure. So when there's someone in the vehicle that, you know, as was mentioned, they're in their vehicle when the car is hit. when they're not inside the vehicle, if they're outside of the vehicle, perhaps in front of their car, either, under the hood or perhaps changing a tire, or, outside of the vehicle, that is when those fatalities and,
Like if you're changing your
right.
tire, there's more deaths from that one than people sitting in the car getting hit.
Right, and
Okay.
as you can imagine, that comes from, you don't have the vehicle to protect you, so you're a little more exposed. This legislation also would, in addition to just providing safety, would also create increased awareness for education purposes. It would make it easier to educate by eliminating any confusion about what type of car you need to pull over or move to the opposite lane for. You're not having to figure out, oh, is that an emergency vehicle, or is it a passenger, vehicle? So we just want to eliminate that confusion and create ease of messaging with our partners, including law enforcement. So the purpose of this is just to make it easier to message to all Kansans. Appreciate opportunity to provide testimony on this bill, and we request the respectful consideration for passage. Thank you.
And you'll stand for questions?
I will, yeah. Well, I'll think about it.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Magana? Representative Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great job, even getting heckled, right? I just wanted to clarify, the bill specifically states they have to be displaying warning lights, road flares, caution signals. So this doesn't apply to a car that's just stalled or sitting on not knowing if someone's in the car or not. It's
No.
just when they're displaying their hazards.
That's correct. And so you often might see, empty vehicles on the side of the road that have, been tagged by law enforcement. So, for example, it would not apply to those types.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Ballard. And by the way, thank you for setting in for Representative Helgerson. I often forget to recognize members that are sitting
You're
in.
so
but-
used to seeing me in here.
Well, that's right.
Thank you so much.
My ranking for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question, though. So you say you have to have displaying hazard warning lights. Okay, so if you don't and it gets hit, what is it, that person's fault, or whose fault might it be?
So I might defer to law enforcement on that question. I believe Candace is going to speak about that shortly, but I believe that it would just remove the option for that violation.
Thank you.
Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this question is either to Catherine, Travis, or even when Ed gets up to talking a little bit, but I ran a bill which was pretty much word for word, I think in 2018. It was February 18th of 18. I popped a deer out on the turnpike. And while we're sitting there waiting for police to show up, there's people just 2 foot from you blowing by at 80 miles an hour. It's like something needs to be done. For some reason, that bill passed through here. It went down to the House and it just died. Then, as you stated, I think 2024, we ran Senate Bill 142 and it made it through the House and went to the Senate and it died. Now we're back here again. Why are these things dying? Why does it seem, from a higher perspective, why is it not important enough to get something like this through when many other states have it?
So I'll speak to 142 since that's the one that I was aware of more. But with that one, the stalling in the Senate and the reason why it failed there was more related to the fact that 142 had been packaged with HB 2499, which was the distracted driving bill. And that was, I think, where there was more controversy. There didn't seem to be any resistance as far as the move over bill itself.
Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Representative Ballard's question about the vehicles alongside the road. And I think we're incrementally, over the years, moving toward any vehicle that's stalled alongside the road. You know, you think about what happens today with electric vehicles. What if that charge completely runs out and they can't display their hazard warning lights? Or somebody is pulled up to the side of the road with a low battery, the battery dies, the lights go out. And I think that we ought to be considering every stalled vehicle or every vehicle that's alongside the road. You should slow down, pull over, give right away or whatever. a lot of times you can't tell if somebody's inside the vehicle or not. So I just think that we need to move a little bit quicker toward moving over for every vehicle that's alongside the road. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representing Minnick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Catherine, I have a question. I have a right-hand drive Jeep. Why don't we equip our highway patrol people with right-hand drive? And I don't care what the weather is. If you pull somebody over, maybe the driver could get out and you guys have your conversation in the road ditch or something or other. Just for everybody else on the highway, I know right-hand drive vehicles are available out there.
Let the Kansas Highway Patrol speak to that.
All right, let's ask her some more law enforcement questions.
I'm working on getting my
Make her
bag.
work on how to deflect those things a little bit. Anyway, any other questions? Representative Del.
This is just a comment for the representative over there concerning EVs. Your EV vehicles typically run on 300 volts, some are up to 600 volt and above at this point. They also have a 12-volt system in them that runs the accessories just like a normal gas vehicle. So even if you ran it completely dead, your accessories should still be working. So thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. You did a great job, and you handled the questions expertly. I know Joel's here to respond up the chain. Okay. Next on the agenda, Captain Brashears is here, and she may be able to answer some of these questions also as part of her testimony. Welcome to the committee, Captain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Captain Candace Brashears, and I have served in the Kansas Highway Patrol for 19 years. The Kansas Highway Patrol appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 8, and we respectfully request the committee consider our agency's concurrence. Kansas law provides that drivers, upon approaching a stationary authorized emergency vehicle using its emergency lights, are required to move into a lane not adjacent to the stationary emergency vehicle, or if moving to a lane not adjacent is impossible or unsafe, to slow down when approaching the stationary emergency vehicle. Authorized emergency vehicles include but are not limited to fire, police, EMS, and tow vehicles. Other laws provide similar protections to waste collection, utility, telecommunications, construction, and highway maintenance vehicles. Senate Bill 8 would essentially mirror the requirements of drivers approaching emergency vehicles and apply them to any stopped vehicle displaying hazard lights or other caution signals. I can attest to the danger we encounter daily when working on the side of the road. A matter of feet and sometimes even inches can be the difference between conducting a safe traffic stop, crash investigation, or motorist assist, or being seriously injured or killed by a passing vehicle. Therefore, we have laws to protect police, firefighters, EMS, and tow truck operators. We believe such precautions should apply to other stop motorists on our roadways. Citizens often have no choice but to stop on the shoulder of a highway after a blown tire, overheated engine, or empty fuel tank. We can all recall a time when our car left us stranded, and the feeling of semi-trucks whooshing past our window, the worry for our children's safety in the back seat, and the anxiety of not knowing whether the next approaching vehicle may cross the fog line and turn a bad day into a deadly day. The Kansas Highway Patrol understands that crashes cause more than crumpled metal, debilitating injuries, or death. The void that's left behind affects the entire community, from the first responders who arrive on the scene to the family members who are left to pick up the pieces. If you ask any state trooper, one of the worst parts of our job is to tell someone that their loved one won't be coming home, that they've been killed in a car crash. I worked the majority of my career in the Kansas City metro area, and I have seen troopers get struck by passing motorists that failed to move over. I have been struck by a semi in severe weather, and although that crash was not a move over violation, there were several close calls with vehicles that failed to move over before my patrol vehicle was struck. I have also seen a multitude of crashes where vehicles that were broke down on the side of the highway have been struck by other vehicles that did not move over. My experiences are not isolated. These crashes are not only happening in the metropolitan areas of Kansas. These crashes happen across Kansas at all times of the year in normal driving conditions. These crashes are preventable, and injuries and deaths from these crashes can be stopped. My career path led me to safety education and prevention. As a trooper that has taught defensive driving classes for many years, moving over for broken down motorists as well as emergency vehicles is something that we have talked about for years. We also talk these safe driving behaviors when speaking with new drivers, so they understand the importance of being a courteous driver. This behavior is not only courteous to other motorists, giving them extra room could prevent a crash, which in turn could save a life or prevent life-altering injuries. If you or your loved ones were broken down on the side of the highway, you would want other motorists to move over for you. We believe this law takes a common sense approach to remedying an unsafe situation. Kansas would join 25 other states with similar laws, including our neighbors in Oklahoma, Iowa, and Colorado. We appreciate that the bill considers traffic, weather, and road conditions, and whether these movements would be safe to perform. We also believe that making Senate Bill 8 law would strengthen our other move-over laws as it aligns our message across the board. If you see flashing lights, move over and slow down. If made law, we will utilize safety messaging through social media campaigns to educate the public that the move-over law applies to everyone on the side of the highway that have flashing lights or caution signals in place. And we will align our messaging with safety partners, including KDOT, to strengthen that message across Kansas. The Kansas Highway Patrol strongly supports Senate Bill 8, and I sincerely thank the members of this committee for considering our testimony and urge your support of this bill. I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Captain Brashears. Did you want to explore that conversation that you had with Catherine a little further, representing Minix? I mean, Captain Brashears probably can.
Captain Brashear can handle this. I was poking a little fun at Catherine over there. But no, in many remote areas, there's still traffic that goes by, and I think we need to be a little bit cognizant of the traffic and be as safe as possible. Seriously, I have a right-hand Jeep, and if you put or manual transmissions in them, I guarantee you a lot of this younger crew would never steal your vehicles. They wouldn't know which door or how to drive the thing. But I just I've always kind of wondered why we don't allow the highway patrolman to be on the right-hand side. I see many times you walk up on the passenger side of a vehicle when you have someone pulled over. And to me, that's a little bit safer than I see troopers hanging on the side of a semi-cab that are almost hanging over that white line. It looks extremely dangerous to me. If you want to comment on that, I appreciate it.
Right, so I don't know what the cost is for a right-hand vehicle, but we do have a fleet of approximately 500. So replacing that entire fleet with a new fleet of right-hand vehicles would take a large fiscal amount for that. But like I said, I don't know what the cost differential is between a right-hand vehicle and a normal vehicle. That would be something that I would have to look up.
Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given my comments, I hope nobody thinks I'm against this bill because I think it's a good bill. But I want to ask a couple of things of you. Have you any statistics in the patrol for vehicles that were involved in some kind of an accident if they didn't have their flashers on, if it was a disabled vehicle just sitting there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Goddard. I do not currently have any statistics. KDOT is the repository of all crash data across the state, so I would have to refer that back to Catherine to see if she had any information on that. And not to deflect from your question, but I would like to elaborate on the question that you asked previously about the abandoned vehicles that did not have their lights on. So with that, if it was dark at nighttime, vehicles had died, it was abandoned, sometimes people cannot see those vehicles, so penalizing them for the inability to move over because they can't see them would be a factor to consider. Also, as we plan to educate people about this bill, you are right. Sometimes vehicles die. Sometimes the battery will die and those lights will not be able to be operational. That is why when we educate on this bill, we can encourage people to not only use their flashers, but to carry flares in their vehicle or cautionary triangles like you'll see if a semi breaks down. That would be something else that we could use and elevate with our education to make sure that people are properly prepared if they do break down on the side of the road.
Thank you for that response. Opinion. I'd like to hear your opinion on whether or not we should have people slow down, pull over, or whatever for any vehicle stranded alongside the roadway. From a safety perspective.
I like this bill, and I like that it protects all the citizens of Kansas. It is possible for us to make that even safer, including those vehicles. It is not only the vehicles that have people occupying them that get struck along the roadside. We see parked vehicles that are abandoned get struck all the time. So and that would be up to the members of this committee.
Well, thank you. And
that would add to.
And I understand, like I said before, we're incrementally moving toward that direction. I get tired of hearing, well, we're going to be like 25 other states. They've already taken the lead to do something. Why doesn't Kansas take the lead to do something and have other states follow us? That's not directed to you or anybody else, but that's just my opinion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Delperdang.
Thank you. Good comment on the flares. If you look in my truck box, there's a few of them back there. Didn't even think about bringing that up. Concerning the right-hand drives, how long do you keep your vehicles in service?
Mr. Chair, Representative Delperdang, we keep our vehicles in service for 49,500 miles.
And what do you do with them after that?
We sell them to other police agencies.
So other small towns would end up with right-hand drives that they may or may not even want at that point. Is that a correct statement? Okay. So then you look at what is the real cost, because the resale could be considerably less. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Captain.
Mr. Chair.
Next on the agenda, we have Ed Klump, the Legislative Liaison for the Chief of Police, Sheriff's Associations, and Peace Officers Association. Welcome to the committee, Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Ed Klump, representing 3 associations Chair just mentioned. I love going last on these. It makes it a lot easier. One of the things I want to say, though, is, and it was mentioned by one of the others, is the consistency this bill creates. We've got emergency vehicles and maintenance vehicles, which were the initial move over laws. Then we added trash trucks, we've added utility vehicles, and the list kind of goes on. And the more inconsistent a rule is, the fewer people follow it because they don't get it as well. And so the more consistent we make it, the better off the obedience to those rules will be without having to take enforcement action. So we think this is a very, very important move to that. And we talked about the other states. Consistency with other states is also important. It will maybe help protect some of our Kansas drivers when there are other states that maybe don't have these laws yet, because they'll be in the habit of moving over and won't strike one of those vehicles. I would like to say something about the data real quick, because when we talk about data and, over the last 5 years, we had this many accidents and this many fatalities and everything. I want to break that down a little bit. So the 82 crashes I saw in one of the testimonies of occupied vehicles alongside of the road in 5 years, that is one every 22 days happening in Kansas. I think that puts a little more emphasis on how serious this problem is. The crashes with unoccupied and occupied vehicles together is one every 1.7 days. So this isn't a rare occurrence. These crashes are frequent, and this law needs to be done to to address those. Now, would all those be covered under this law? Maybe not, because they may be sitting on the side of the road without their flashers on for various reasons. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I'd also like to, if I could, address Representative Goddard's question. If we don't limit this to those with warning devices or lights on, the problem that's created, we complicate the law, because this law will apply anywhere, even in the cities. And the one base of the law is if there's 2 lanes in that direction, then you have to move over. Think of 10th Street out here and how many cars are parked along in front of homes and stuff. That would mean we'd have to isolate somehow, take this out of the city realm or the residential realm or something like that. And so it complicates the law. So we like this law the way it is. We understand that issue. We still have cars that are unoccupied, wouldn't be covered in this, that get struck, but at least there's no people around those, and generally speaking. And so it's, you know, sometimes there's things that appear to be good intentions, but they complicate the application of the law and the understanding of the law by our drivers. So I just point that out, and I'll stand for questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Ed? Representative Essex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a quick question. So we talked about 4-lane moving over, go back to 2-lane. And is it officer discretion as far as if you proceed with caution or not, or does this bill change anything like that?
Well, I can just tell you from my practical experiences over this many years ago now, but law enforcement always uses discretion in these things and looks at the totality of the circumstances around it. We're kind of taught that because that's what the court looks at in so many cases that we handle, is what's the totality of circumstances. And so, you know, the bill doesn't say this, but in the I'll call it the cop mind, you kind of look at what would a reasonable person do. And if there's no traffic oncoming and you don't move over and you don't slow down, you have not complied with this law. But if there's no traffic coming, or if there is traffic coming and I don't move over, well, that's why we have that 2-lane provision in the law. You're supposed to still use caution, slow down. But let's take if you do have an accident. Well, you pretty well made the case you didn't use caution. So it does have applicability that way. But that's just kind of a routine judgment call that sometimes we make in a lot of our laws.
Representative Goddard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to beat a dead horse, okay? And I appreciate your comments about in-town driving and those kinds of things, vehicles parked along residential streets and things. My whole issue is bringing awareness to folks that, hey, you're out there on I-70 or Highway 75 or whatever highway you are driving in the state. If you see a vehicle that's stranded alongside the road, whether they have flashers on or not, proceed with caution. Slow down or move over if you can, et cetera, et cetera.
We absolutely do believe that is a good practice. But, you know, sometimes trying to make laws to cover common sense don't work well. And so I think that the laws, the bill as it's written, really addresses the key issues. And we'll find a lot of people will move over even without those lights once we get them in that habit of doing that. Because, you know, many times, especially on a turnpike or an interstate, they see that vehicle from quite a ways away and you see them starting to move over well before they get to that vehicle. So,
like I said before, I'm fully supportive of this bill. I definitely vote for it. I just wanted to raise awareness a little bit. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to mention one other thing about data. I will just note that more people have died on Kansas highways in the last 5 years than bills that have died on this issue in the last 5 years.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. All right, committee, we also have written proponent testimony from Wendy Stark with League of Kansas Municipalities, Phyllis Larimore, Legislative Liaison for Safe Kids for Kansas. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Seeing none, do we have any neutral testimony? Do we have any opponent testimony? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 8. And I would like to recognize Sean Stewart with AAA. Why don't you just stand up so everybody can see you? Sean's an excellent resource on some of these vehicle safety laws. Thanks very much for being here. Committee, the other thing on the agenda is I would like to have a motion to approve the House Transportation minutes for January for the 14th, 16th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 27th, 28th, and 29th, unless anybody has any changes to the minutes. I know you guys all poured over those in infinite detail. Yeah, you may even need to abstain, but you may have been there. Okay, so we have a motion by Representative Essex. Do we have a second? Second by Representative Bohai. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Next week, I do not plan on meeting on Monday. On Tuesday, yes, enjoy the free time. On Tuesday, we'll have a presentation by Carolyn Simons. She's Senior Director of State Funding Policy for the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. She's an economist, and she'll talk to us just a little bit about how funding is affecting highways across the state. I think it'll be very interesting. You can hear it from someone other than the normal sources on that. We also will take, I plan to take a final action on this bill on Tuesday. I would encourage all of us to make an attempt to put it through on the consent calendar. The more we touch this, the more opportunities we have to, the more times people have to vote on this, the more chances we have of not being able to get through the process. We might not like that, but it's very true that we struggle to get some of these things over the line. Then Wednesday, we're going to have an informational briefing on oversized and overweight loads. Some of you may not deal with this, but in areas close to me, I continue to hear from constituents about sending an oversized load on a two-lane highway with no shoulders, and they got a semi coming the other way, and or we have people with oversized loads taking too long to get vehicles through the intersection and not allowing traffic. We'll also, I made a scheduling error, so be ready for a full meeting that day. We'll also have hearings on SB 18, license plate, SB 98, another license plate, and then SB 97, which is about purchasers of non-highway vehicles and an off-road title. So you may want to look at those bills. Then Thursday, probably take final action on those bills. I've not seen anything else come over from the Senate, so there's a good chance we're done until Congress at that point. So, yes.
Thank you. I may or may not be here Monday, depending on who's absent, but we have, Tuesday, excuse me. But we've heard this bill before, and I've been on transportation until this year for a long time. This is a small bill when you look at it, but it's an important bill. And I hope you would really consider putting it on consent calendar so we can get it across. I can't tell you how important it is or how we hear from people and everything else. But since I may not be here, I'm just going to put my dollar's worth in right now.
Thank you. Representative Delperdane.
If I may, I'd just like to second the motion of your ranking member. It is an important bill, and I'd love to see the thing through. So, question I've got to you or anybody, is there, who administers the state driver's license testing? Is that Department of Revenue? Is it Department of Transportation?
My understanding, it's Department of Revenue, Division of Motor Vehicles within the
And
Department of Revenue.
is anybody in the room from them? this
I
time?
think we probably got some people that are familiar with the process, maybe.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out in case they're even listening, but one of the test questions on there that I've seen over and over is, are you ever allowed to cross a solid yellow line? And the word ever. And if you've got police there on the side of the road, you've got people out there with an accident, yes, you're going to. But if you answer that yes, it's a wrong answer. That needs to be looked at. So thank you for letting me throw that out there.
Captain Brashears, do you have anything to say on that? I mean, do you have any comments on that? You come to the mic. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I mean, but it's stuff like that that sometimes creates problems when we do bills and transportation because we all drive and we've all got tickets. Okay. Not all of us, but I.
Thank you. Ed volunteered to come up here but I will do my best. So something to consider there is officer discretion as well. So even though the driver's test is saying that if a driver is moving over there with caution, that would be something for an officer to consider discretion with. The Department of Revenue would need to be contacted to change anything with that test. I haven't seen that test in just a few years. But that would be something that they would need to look at. But I would say that officers would have discretion if they did see someone crossing a yellow line to, slow down and move over for those stop vehicles.
And I think Representative Delperdang's concern is more with the question than it is the.
It's just, if it was written of under normal circumstances, I agree, but where it says, are you ever allowed to? And the answer on it is no. If I've got you standing out there in the middle of the lane, what am I supposed to do? It just doesn't make sense. So, and the people taking those tests are typically your younger people who are just coming out of driver's ed or something, and they need to be taught correctly. So
next time we have Kent Selk, I think he's in charge of that.
Yeah. Okay.
You've seen Kent before, haven't you? Kent Selk.
I think
He's
so.
been in here a number of times, and I think he would be a good one to
That's
talk
fine.
to about that. Anything else? Hey. Anything else for the committee? All right. Seeing none. Thank you very much. All right. We're adjourned, everybody.